Welcome to another episode of the Battlefields Bourbon Podcast, the podcast where we talk all things Civil War history and bourbon whiskey. I'm Jack, joined as always by my co-host Elijah, and we are coming to you from the historic Bell House in beautiful downtown Winchester, preserved by the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, the official sponsor of the Battlefields Bourbon Podcast. Well, first podcast of 2024. We are excited to come to you all this year. We've got an exciting lineup of episodes in 2024. Some exciting guests coming on. But we thought we'd bring it back home to start the year with an episode of Winchester during the Civil War. But before we get into, as the title states for the episode, Winchester at War, we've got a very special bourbon, I think. So Elijah, why don't you take us right into it?
Yeah, we've got some Old Forester single barrel strength. This is from a DMV Bourbon Select group. And this one is 130.6 proof. So you're looking at 65.30 alcohol by volume in terms of the percentage.
What's the proof?
130.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 130.6, yeah.
That'll wake us up.
Yeah, getting up there a little bit. 140 would be your hazmat. So this was aged, it says, as the label shows, Warehouse K on the 6th floor. But there's no age statement on this one. Old Forester, I'm not too much of a connoisseur of their products, not by choice, I would say. I mean, they do some great stuff. I like everything I've ever had from them, so it's not like I try to avoid them or that I dislike their product, because I think they do great stuff. I just, whenever I'm in a store,
You're not picking Old Forester.
I just tend to go with another option, which I don't know why, because if you've ever had the 1910 expression of their lineup, it's fantastic. I can't say I've ever had anything from them that I didn't like. I just, for whatever reason, don't tend to go that route.
Yeah.
Silly me, I guess.
I've heard good things, though. Like, people, whatever they make, it's a good, like, go-to.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, their Whiskey Row series, it's like 1870... 1897, 1910, 1920.
They're all like clustered together, like second to top shelf.
Different styles based on like the time period. And then there's a 1924 that's coming out, has come out. I don't know what the deal is with that. I think some people have found them in North Carolina maybe, but that's a 10-year, 100 proof Old Forester expression. And I've heard good things about that one, so that's exciting to try as well. But yeah, they do a ton of fantastic stuff. They're based out of Whiskey Road, downtown Louisville, in Kentucky. A Brown-Forman brand. So they, like Jack Daniels and other distilleries like that are owned by Brown-Forman. This mash bill allegedly is 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley. Same mash bill as Woodford Reserve, which is, I believe, another Brown-Forman brand. I don't want to say for sure. I'm pretty sure, but I don't want to, have someone correct me and go, no, that's wrong. But we can crack this one open. I've been looking forward to trying this one for
pop near the.
Yeah,
there you go.
Hang on.
First pop of 2024.
It's a pretty good one.
Pretty good.
But
this is our first pour, right, of 2024. You haven't had a pour yet. I haven't had a pour.
More or less a little dry January action.
A little dry Jan going on.
Involuntarily. Try to slide that over. You can smell it. I mean, it permeates the room as soon as you pop the cork on it. It's got a nice aroma to it.
Did they give you a mash bill?
No, that was just online. Yeah, it doesn't say on the label.
What was it again?
72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley. So I mean, their stuff is pretty corn heavy. If you ever tried the 1870 expression, you can definitely taste it in that one. But I mean, it's good. It's got a nice. The 1870 at least has a classic old style whiskey.
What is DMV Bourbon?
It's just a little group that does barrel picks and stuff.
In the DMV?
In the area. I'm not sure exactly where they're based out of, but
the sticker on the back is funny.
Yeah, they do funny little barrel pick stickers. Most groups do. They'll pick like a funny little.
What do we have to do barrel picks?
Just apply for one, I guess. I mean, I know.
It's just talking to a distillery and saying, hey, we're cool. Let us slap a sticker and you can promote it and we'll promote it. Is that really like the concept?
So you, depends on the distillery how you do like a barrel pick. You can apply for them. I know Sazerac does like lottery drawings.
Yeah.
Because so many people apply to pick barrels from Buffalo Trace and, places like that, 1792. But with, I think, Old Forester, I'm not sure how they operate. I know New Riff, you just talk to an ambassador and they can hook you up. And you can go buy a quarter barrel, a half barrel, or a full barrel. So they've got plenty of options.
You have to buy it.
Yeah, you have to buy
and then
the amount.
It's not like free. It's not like, man, these guys got some street cred.
No.
We'll let them slap a stick. I was really thinking, I was like, it'd be cool if we did a barrel pick. But then if we have to buy a barrel of bourbon, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, that gets pricey. Yeah.
You can barely buy the bottle.
That's thousands of dollars for a barrel.
That's a no-go.
Yeah, maybe one day.
It was a nice thought. Like for a moment there, I thought, man, it'd be cool to have our logo on something. Yeah.
Nice oak. That's got to have some age to it. I mean, I can't imagine they would bottle something young.
Yeah. I mean, and the corn's not too heavy off the nosing, I don't think.
Mm-mm. No, it's like a brown sugar, caramel, vanilla, all that, all your typical responses to a bourbon nosing, but like much more in depth. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of cherry in there. That second hint,
I get like a darker fruit.
Yeah, almost. I don't know. I don't want to say.
Don't say it.
What was the other one that we had that I thought was like Queen Anne's chocolate covered cherries? Was it that Four Roses?
Yeah.
I think
so.
This one is like heavier in that profile than the Four Roses
with the cherry smell.
That candied cherry, like the chocolate covered cherry. You know how it's got like that creamy center in there with the cherry in the chocolates? That's that kind of sugary sweetness I'm getting out of that as well. But
let's give her a sip.
Yeah, give it a little tasting.
Definitely got some heat, but it's not like
not overbearing
crazy
for what it is. Yeah,
but it like hits your tongue and you're like, oh, this has got some proof to her.
Yeah, it's warm. Almost a little saltiness on the palate. Interesting for sure. But those high proofs, they definitely have so much more depth of flavor to them. Obviously, because they're not watered down, you can get more out of it.
This will keep you warm, that's for sure.
Yeah, it'll warm you up all the way down. But it's
it's even on the front label, the DMV Bourbon Select.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but the back sticker looks like it's just put on top.
Yeah, that's
of the
applied.
Others.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Was like those barrel pick groups. They'll have their own labels made for the barrel that they pick, and they just slap those on the back or on the front, wherever.
That is interesting, but they have it in the actual.
Yeah, so the distillery, most distilleries
that.
will put a sticker on there with your name on the label. I know New Riff, like I keep harping on them. I think they even do laser engraving on the bottle, so like we could get our logo if we ever did a barrel pick with New Riff. We could get our logo laser engraved on the.
We can do a lot of things, Elijah.
Maybe one day.
Maybe
a
one
kid
day.
Can dream, right?
Let's hit the 1 year mark and we'll see where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Well, awesome. I'm getting right away when it first hit the tongue. I got the corn. Which I don't hate that. If I had something pre-2024. I don't remember what it was, but it had to have been a higher, because I didn't even like, a guy poured it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't I forget what he told me what it was, but the corn just was like so much, but I was like not turned off. But it was the first time, without knowing what the bottle was, without knowing what was in it, the mash bill, I was able to be like, high corn content in that one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever was confirmed right. I could have been totally wrong. It could have been like, more rye or something in it. But I'm starting to learn a lot. I feel like out in the wild, tasting all these things,
you're progressing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, anything else with Old Forester?
Nothing that comes to mind. I mean, obviously the people will see the picture of it when we post it, but the label on the back,
Did you get a picture of that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
The Smokey the Bear
peeing on the fire.
Peeing on the campfire.
That's funny.
Little
it says the first bottled bourbon.
I don't know how true that is.
That can't be true.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I feel like there were products back in the.
That can't be true, because if you're making bourbon whiskey pre-Old Forester, so pre-1870, you're not just drinking it from a barrel. It's being bottled, right?
Jugged, ceramic. But I mean, because you're usually doing it by like the jug, I guess, instead of like individual bottles for
glass
bottles.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's something
If
we'll have to look
someone at Old
into.
Forester is listening, please clarify.
Yeah, let us know the history on that, because that'd be a cool tidbit.
Yeah, Old Forester. Alrighty. Well, Winchester at war. An exciting topic.
It's a lot.
People are like, man, you're just doing what you know with Winchester. And yes, we are.
But there's so much to unpack with
that. My gosh. Yeah, who knows if we'll get it done. But it's, Winchester, I feel like, doesn't get a lot of credit sometimes for being a Civil War town. I feel like for a good number of years, the town did embrace it. And I think it still does in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a Civil War. I mean, people go to Gettysburg and Richmond and other places, and it's like this is a Civil War town. But I don't think as many people realize that about Winchester until they come. Maybe they've just always heard about Winchester, and when they finally come to Winchester of the Valley, they're like, "Holy cow!" Like, a lot happened here. And I think the biggest takeaway working with tourists a lot is like they're like, we always heard it changed hands 72 times.
I was just about to say, yeah,
didn't it change hands 100 times? And working at the museum growing up, I was like, that was like the number one thing that people asked, and I always clarified, and I was like,
72 official.
Well, I go with 73 is what I say.
Yeah,
73. Now you got me wondering. 72 times.
I always heard 72.
Maybe that's right.
That was always what I heard.
Hold on, we're gonna fact check from the Google.
Yeah, I was just about to say, most contested town in the entire war.
So it says, 70 times. 72 times, this other thing says. 72, 70. So it's 72 is but that number, for folks that don't know, is based off of a diarist account of troop movements in and out of Winchester. So there's even the alleged count of 13 times in one day.
That sounds about right.
Which is like, okay. But it's like, yeah, where and I think a good friend and great historian Jonathan Noyalis talked about this on, I think it was the Addressing Gettysburg podcast, about that myth and legend of 72 times. And yeah, if you count the in and out, sure, you can get that number. I mean, the diarist wrote it down, and it's documented in a way. We tell people it's like, now I can't even remember the number. It's like 6 or 7 major occupations, though. Mm-hmm. Major occupations.
Like long-term, not
long-term,
a couple hours, whatever.
Minutes, And that's really what this diarist would count at times, is like, well, these troops got kicked out of town today, and then they came back. So that's like 3 times. Because
they could have been like one army's coming in from the north end of town. As
they're
the
not
other
even
one's
talking
heading out
about
the
armies,
south end
though.
of town. Or even just a regiment, or like a cavalry scouting party.
Yep.
Like literally just like the most minuscule thing. And the other opposing force either heads down the valley pike a couple minutes to the next town, turns around and comes right back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take the 72 times. We'll count it. Because a lot did happen here. I mean, early on, you've got, and why, well, I guess the big question is, why was Winchester important? As a town, it wasn't, strategic in a sense like Richmond, or
they struggled to fortify it because they always mentioned how. Yeah. I hate how the Federals say this, how they lacked high ground to build forts, whereas, I mean, you and I both know there's hills everywhere around here.
I guess they weren't just like, they weren't enough hills, or like the hills they were wanting. Yeah, so
a hill in the right place.
It was an undefendable town, though. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so where Winchester sits in the lower Shenandoah Valley, right smack dab in the middle, it has some hills, but on the western side of the town, but then west of those hills, it kind of plateaus out and then, grades out, comes back up. So you can easily move all 360 degrees around the town, if you wanted to. But the strategic importance was its position in the Shenandoah Valley. At the very end, practically, you had Martinsburg just north of it, which was the next major town. But for the sake of how the counties voted when it came to secession, when the state convened during the secession deliberations, Winchester was the most prominent within the seceding counties, or the pro-secession counties. So Winchester itself had, I think we say seven major roads converging on it, and I'm sure listeners will be like, well, it's starting to sound like Gettysburg. It's got all these roads converging. And in a sense, yes. It had the Berryville Pike, which connected, east to west.
Route 7.
Yeah, which is modern day Route 7. You had the Romney Pike, which
50.
Yeah, which is modern day Route 50.
Pewtown Road.
The Pewtown Road, which was modern day 522, and those two routes, Romney and Pewtown, were the ones used by Jackson in 62 during his Romney expedition, moving westward. Route 7 or Berryville Pike will be used during the Third Battle of Winchester. The Valley Pike, which is probably the most important, was the one running through the heart of the Shenandoah Valley, running north to south, south to north, through all the major towns. And it's what modern-day Interstate 81 parallels today. And that was of vital importance because it was a macadamized road, which means it had layered crushed gravel and stone. So it had some infrastructure with it. It wasn't just a dirt or
a mud path. Yeah.
Front
Royal Pike, 522 South.
Yeah, so Front Royal, the Front Royal Pike.
Second Winchester, some of the action. Second Winchester. And
then you had the Millwood Pike, which is modern day 50 east, which is the same road that we talked about. What was that, episode 2 or 3, with the fighting over in Loudoun County?
3, yeah, it would have been with Middleburg.
Yeah, Upperville, Middleburg, and Aldie. That's the same road there. So there's all these, and those take you to the northern Virginia, to the D.C. area. Some take you south into the heart of Pennsylvania. North to the heart of Pennsylvania. Yeah. To the boonies of West Virginia, Western Virginia at the time. So all of them converged here. You had the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, had a spur that came into Winchester and stopped. Today, the whole valley has railroads everywhere, and the valley's connected with these railroads. But back then, there wasn't a straight line that went from like Martinsburg through Winchester all the way south to Harrisonburg. There was just the Baltimore and Ohio that spurred. I believe it's from Harper's Ferry. It spurs down. Spurs down. And that railroad played a vital importance during the Second Battle of Winchester. So you had all these, features like that that played of importance, moving supplies, moving troops, and connecting armies, hiding armies. But there wasn't, for the sake of, there wasn't like a massive hospital here in Winchester. There wasn't a depot of foodstuffs or supplies for the armies. I'm sure there was, but there wasn't like there was down in Stanton.
So when you hear Stevenson's depot at Second Winchester, that's not of any real strategic importance as a depot itself. It's more so just a little railroad stop.
Yeah, train depot.
If that.
Yeah. But starting off, really going back to Harper's Ferry, which is in the Shenandoah Valley. It's in the northeast corner of the valley where the Potomac and Shenandoah converge to form the main body of the Potomac River. And in 1859, when John Brown performs his raid on the Harper's Ferry Arsenal, troops are called from Winchester. Some of those militiamen, like the Morgan Continentals, the Mount Vernon Rifles, the Marion Guards, are loaded on that Winchester Potomac Railroad we were talking about, and they were sent to Harper's Ferry to assist with the liberation. That's a funny term to use for what John was doing. But to assist with the ceasing of the rebellion per se in Harper's Ferry. So that's kind of the first taste of action they'll get, and a local Winchester man by the name of Richard Parker, who is a judge from Winchester, will be called up to Charlestown, Virginia, today West Virginia, to preside over the case. So he would serve at the Frederick County Courthouse. That's the one you see in the episode picture. That is a sketch of it during the war, being used as a prison, one of its many uses. That was his home court, and he'd be called to Charlestown to preside over the John Brown trial and would issue the sentence, death by hanging, to John Brown.
Which that's an interesting case in and of itself, as treason against the state and not like a federal treason charge. Because he was charged with treason against the state of Virginia, was he not?
Man, you're asking questions. I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm pretty sure that was what ended up happening, and that's why a lot of the outrage was that what it was that Virginia, the state, sentenced him to hang because he committed treason against the state.
You're asking good questions, Elijah. Ones that I don't have the answers to.
I try.
But coincidentally enough, the bodies of John Brown's son and some other raiders were brought to the Winchester Medical College for medical education use. And they would be housed there. And it's actually funny enough, and I'm surprised Nick didn't talk about this when he was on in his episode about the 1st, 10th, and 29th Maine, when the 10th Maine was here in 1862. So spoiler alert, Federals come to Winchester. They burned the medical college in search for the body of John Brown's son.
It's a good way to do it.
But they could not find the remains.
Not sure what they figured to have happen there, burning the place to the ground and hope to find some bones in the rubble.
They set fire to the building, and the fire departments that were here in Winchester were held back from responding to the fire, so they just let it burn to the ground. But so that's kind of its first taste of war. Come April of 1861, when Virginia secedes from the United States, troops are being mustered in and called to fall in at Harper's Ferry, where the Confederate Army is forming. They'll be drilled and trained there, and then brought that Confederate Army, which is the Army of the Shenandoah at the time, will be brought to Winchester, and they saw better position here in Winchester than in Harper's Ferry. And by that time, I believe it's Robert Patterson's Federal forces are in the valley, in the Martinsburg area, and you'll get the first battle fought in the Shenandoah Valley on July 2nd, 1861, which is the Battle of Hoke's Run, also known as Falling Waters, but not the post-Gettysburg 1863 Battle of Falling Waters. This is Jackson versus Patterson,
this was when Jackson was not a general yet, right?
Yeah, he's still a colonel, I believe.
Yeah. Because Johnston was in command of the army at this point, was he not?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that'll be your first taste of combat. And then you have the Battle of First Manassas, Bull Run. And it's not until about, back in the fall of 61, Jackson, I believe, returns into right around the winter, maybe, of 61. And sets up headquarters here with his army, and come January 1, and a topic hopefully we'll cover in a future episode, the Romney expedition will take place, and they'll leave from Winchester. Eventually, majority of his forces will remain here in Winchester, but that expedition takes place, and as a result, a lot of movement, a lot of federal forces being shifted around, and then come March, the federal army comes towards Winchester, and the Confederates pull out, moving south up the valley. And during this time period, armies will then the Confederates will shift back north, and this was a topic we covered in the first battle of Kernstown on March 23rd. So this is
it's all tying in.
Oh yeah, this is where we had a lot of This was the first major battle, and we fought in Winchester, known as the Battle of Winchester at first, not knowing there'd be many, many more to come after this. Trying to find a quote here. But something we mentioned in that episode was with Mike Robinson on. Mm-hmm. So check out that episode. What episode is that?
4? Yeah, it's 4.
We talked a lot about this was civilians' first taste of seeing the war. You know, mm-hmm. I'm sure they heard about it in the papers, things like that. But war finally came to the doorsteps of the civilians of Winchester. And it's truly a horrific sight. You know, there was one woman that said her kids went off to watch the battle, and they came home, and, you know, they were just not the same after that. I think they said they watched a man's head get blown off by a cannonball.
Good
yeah,
Lord.
Crazy stuff.
It's not like going to a movie or something.
No. So there's this great account after the first battle of Kernstown. Diarist Cornelia MacDonald will write on March 23rd, so the same day as the battle, every available place was turned into a hospital. She says she went to the courthouse, which is what you see in the episode picture, like we said, that building. She said the porch was strewed with dead men. Some had papers pinned to their coats telling who they were. All had their capes of their gray coats turned over to hide their still faces, but their poor hands, so pitiful they looked and so helpless. As she's walking into the building itself, she says a long line of blue-clad forms lay on each side as I passed up the room. I saw a pair of sad-looking eyes intently regarding the pitcher the servant carried. I stooped and offered him some. It was lemonade. He could not raise his head to drink, so I poured it into his mouth with a tablespoon. He looked up at me thankfully. It was a beautiful drink, he said, for a thirsty man. The next day, I saw them carrying his corpse towards the door. But right out of the gate, you got women like this and other civilians stepping up, or having to no choice or whatever, respond to this hell that has now come to the town. She continues to write after this event. She wanted to be useful, and she tried her best, but at the sight of one face that the surgeon uncovered, telling me that it must be washed, I thought I should faint. A ball had struck him on the side of the face, taking away both eyes and the bridge of his nose. It was a frightful spectacle. The surgeon asked me if I would wash his wound. I tried to say yes, but the thought of it made me so faint that I only staggered towards the door. As I passed, my dress brushed up a pile of amputated limbs heaped up near the door. So,
all that's going on in the courthouse, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah, she says, another poor man I saw who was well known to my family. He told me his wife was away in Missouri and he should not see her ever again. As the doctor had told him that he could not live till night, he shook my hand as I left and begged me to give his regards to my husband and family, the regards of a dead man. So it's just like right out the gate, this is
deep stuff.
And maybe it's something they've never experienced before, but I couldn't imagine. And the fact that she was able to write this account down, not knowing what the rest of the war, and this wasn't just one time, it'd be like, wow, if this was one time, this was crazy. But this would continue to happen to the people of Winchester throughout the war.
And it's not just battles of Winchester that they saw the effects of that from. I mean, they had wounded from Antietam and Gettysburg, just getting carted back to Winchester after the battles. I mean, a lot of Confederate wounded that were brought back into the valley after retreating from both of those battles. So, I mean, it's not even like just, okay, another battle happened, time to take care of these people. It's like a constant flow from every battle that they're getting involved in. Somehow, wounded and dead end up back at Winchester.
Yeah. So, and like she said, a lot of the buildings in town were, almost every building, she says, was utilized as a hospital. I mean, in bringing these dead to the town from Kernstown, even today, it's not like a quick, it's a quick drive, but it's not. I couldn't imagine, that was your closest spot, but having to drag all these guys into the town. I mean, Kernstown's roughly like, if you draw it from the heart of downtown Old Town Winchester to what's today Kernstown, it's like about 5 miles, I think. So roughly, yeah. Maybe like 3 to 4, something like that.
Which we don't think about because, I mean,
it's all one cluster town. Yeah, the city itself has expanded to Kernstown, but back then it was, miles. Union soldier and made fame in the movie Glory, Robert Gould Shaw was present at the first Battle of Kernstown, and he'll visit. That. Yeah, that's pretty cool. He was here. I think he was in command of it must have been a Massachusetts regiment, not the 54th Massachusetts, obviously, in 1862, but he was in command, or not in command. He may have just been I don't know his rank at First Kernstown, but he was there, and he visits about 5 days later after First Kernstown. He says, I went to the courthouse, so we're talking about the same building. In the entry, there were about 20 dead men laid out with the capes of their overcoats folded over their faces. We looked at many faces to see if there might not be a chance, not by chance be some college acquaintance among them. It was strange to see dead and wounded Ohio men and Virginians laying there side by side. So, and that's just the courthouse, Yeah. That's just one spot, place, and that's one battle we've talked about.
Of the entire war, and they're already getting their first taste of all of that. I mean, it's just setting them up to be, I guess, battle-hardened veterans later on. But even still, I couldn't imagine whether you see it one time or 100 times. It would still, I don't know. I feel like that would strike me just the same. That's just one of those things that I don't think you can ever really get used to. Yeah.
So, after this, you have Jackson's Valley campaign takes place. They're going up and down the valley. The Federals will hold command from, passing the bourbon here. Federals will hold command of Winchester from when they're there after kind of pushing Jackson out pre-First Kernstown. They'll hold Winchester until the first Battle of Winchester. So we've got now our second battle to take place in and around Winchester. On May 25th, 1862, you have the first Battle of Winchester, which we have not covered, but we will cover in a future episode. Spoiler alert, it results in a Confederate victory. The Confederates send the Federals in a great skedaddle through Winchester, and it's called the Great Skedaddle. I'm sure if Nick was here, he would remind us that that is what it is called.
This is where all the women of Winchester are poking out their front doors, shooting at the retreating Yankees with their revolvers and what have you. Is it not? Yeah. Or they did that on more than one occasion. I feel like I think any time the Confederates were in town and they sent the Yankees in retreat, the women would just poke out of their windows and front doors and just start popping some pistol shots at the retreating Federals. But
I don't know. But as a result, Nathaniel Banks, who is a former Speaker of the House, more political commander, good friend of Lincoln, he'll be sent out and get the nickname Commissary Banks because of the abundance of supplies that are left behind. So he's basically resupplying the Confederate Army at this point. So this is on May 25th. A little known, tidbit about First Winchester a lot of people don't realize is that, sure, a lot of the pro-Confederate civilians were relieved when their savior Jackson, came back and free the town of Banks's grip on them. But a lot of people don't realize that people that were absolutely terrified were some of the freed and enslaved African-American population of Winchester. Jackson had this lore surrounding him in a negative sense. Jackson often was looked at like, you'd use him to make your kids go to bed at night. If you don't fall asleep, old Stonewall's going to come get you. But when it came to the black population, free or enslaved, rumors had spread and that Jackson was, stealing freeing enslaved blacks and just killing them or sending them south and bagging them up and sending them back to, to their masters or to be enslaved, things like that. So, and on some cases and in some instances, there are reports that, Jackson, not personally, but under his leadership, instances like this did take place where some blacks were captured and sent away. So
was that part of the Fugitive Slave Act?
No. I think this was just
just in general
as like this was like during the war.
Yeah.
So that fear was something that hit really hard because you don't know what's really going to happen. And once Jackson takes command, they it's what's going to happen next. Am I going to live to see the next day? That fear was also there. Jackson pushes Banks all the way to, no pun intended, the banks of the Potomac River, turns around, comes back, and starts moving all the way back up the valley south. And we covered that in an episode of the Battle of Harrisburg, Cross Keys, and Port Republic, June 6th, 8th, and 9th of 1862.
Banks is for the folks familiar with Winchester, just to give some landmarks for tourism, I guess. The Taylor Hotel, Banks's headquarters, modern day McAdoo's restaurant. So yeah, if you're ever back downtown on the Walking Mall or anything like that, and you see the Taylor Hotel, that's old Banks's headquarters for the time being.
Yeah,
or while he was here for however short-lived that was.
And if you watch Gods and Generals, the scene where Jackson meets up with his wife, that is near. They go to the Taylor Hotel. Jackson later on has a headquarters here through the kindness and generosity of Louis T. Moore, who is the great-grandfather of Mary Tyler Moore, the actress, which is now Jackson's headquarters museum in Winchester. I could be wrong on all those facts. I'm not I've got other people that are experts on.
Sounds right.
Jackson's.
We'll run with it.
But after that, you've got until after the Valley campaign. Banks holds command because after that, after Cross Keys and Port Republic, Jackson will slip back over the Blue Ridge Mountains and head east for the Peninsula Campaign near Richmond. So Banks will hold command of Winchester from June 4th till about early September 1862. Now, in between that, about in August and September and October, there's some minor other occupations with some other generals. General White, I believe, General Pyatt, some other ones. This is where during one incident, there is this is when the fortifications of Winchester will start to be constructed. Yeah. So, and this is important to mention too, when Jackson's men are here in 1861, pre-Manassas, they're beginning to fortify some of the towns and to fortify the town with some fortifications. And this is Fort Alabama, where Star Fort is today. Fort Jackson, which is where the vicinity of Fort Milroy. Fort Collier on the east side of the Valley Pike or the Martinsburg Pike will begin to be constructed. Bowers Hill, some of these, earthworks, trenches, things like that. Mm-hmm. Well, in the fall, once the Federals kind of have long-term occupation, they will start to reinforce those fortifications and rebuild them. So on the south end of the hill that Fort Jackson is on, they will begin to build trenches and earthworks up there and name them Fort Garibaldi. Star Fort will start to take a different sort of shape. Fort Alabama, will start to take a different shape. Things like that. Well, at some point in the fall of 1862, I guess pre-Antietam, so pre-September 17th or whatever, during one of the federal occupations here, the Union soldiers within the fortifications, specifically Fort Garibaldi, will decide to have some target practice with the town. Oftentimes, there's accounts of them shooting wooden cannonballs into the town, but for some reason, on this day in the fall of 62, they decided to use a live round, an actual cannonball, a round cannonball, a solid shot. and they fire it into the town, and it actually completely passes through a house. I believe it's on the corner of Cecil and Loudon Street, which is today the Italian Touch restaurant. It's a newer building. It's not the historic building, but when they built that building, they put in a reproduction cannonball, and there's a little sign above it that says the date. I believe sometime in September of 1962 that shot was fired. They said it just missed the bed where the kids were sleeping in, it passed completely through. And when they were repatching it up, the guy repatched it and put it back in. So it was, even after the war, that cannonball was in the house. I don't know where the actual cannonball is today, because the one in there now is a reproduction.
Right.
But hopefully it didn't get taken with the house when they demolished it. So leading from there, that's, the fortifications in Winchester are starting to be boosted up a little bit. And come December of 1862, actually Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, Robert Milroy's troops, Union Brigadier General Robert Milroy his troops will start to funnel into town. It's not until January 1st he actually enters the town himself, and this begins Milroy's occupation. This will be roughly a 6-month occupation of Winchester, and he goes crazy.
He is the most hated, I think, of all of the
I'm a big Milroy guy. I love Milroy. As you saw by my CDV that I have. I was stumbling my words just now, just trying to get that out because I was so excited to bring up Milroy. Milroy will start his occupation at about this time in 1863. It starts. So he begins to reinforce a lot of the fortifications here in town. Specifically, one of the homes he'll tear down completely and use for supplies. So I believe it's on January 20th, 1863. Mary Green Howley, a Devil Diarist, writes in there that in Winchester, she writes that the walls of Mr. Mason's home came down today, and that Mr. Mason is James Mason, Senator James Mason, the grandson of founding father and author of the Bill of Rights, George Mason, and who's the namesake of George Mason University. And James Mason, as a resident of Winchester before the war, he serves and represents Virginia in the United States Senate. When the war opens up, he sides with the Confederacy, and he is one of the two representatives sent to start talks with Great Britain. And he is actually one involved with the Trent Affair, as it's known, where one of the ships is held up by the United States Navy. And
it's a little known
incident.
Historic incident.
I'm sure we'll cover it more in a future episode. Mason himself, like his grandfather, liked to write, government documents, and in fun pastime, politics. And he wrote the 1850 Fugitive Slave Law, which was, not the best document in the world.
Nope.
And when Robert Milroy comes to Winchester in 1863, Milroy is a staunch abolitionist. He believes that God, has sent him to be a general, to use Old Testament ways to use this war to free the slaves. And that's what he believes. So
he quoted as saying, "My will is law."
My will is absolute law, is a Milroy quote. So he believes that is what that is what he is here to do, and he will do just that. So one of the things is later in January he tears down, James Mason's home. It started to be picked apart earlier, in the fall of 1862, summer of 1862. The roof would come off, things like that. It was just ransacked completely over previous federal occupations, but Milroy would tear it down completely and use a lot of those supplies to use to rebuild and refortify a lot of the earthworks here in Winchester. So from there, you will get the completion of Fort Milroy, which is the combination of Fort Jackson, Fort Garibaldi, that cluster on the hill there. Fort Alabama will officially become Star Fort. You have West Fort to the west of Fort Milroy. What else will you have? You have Parkins Mill Battery out there off the Front Royal Pike, 522 South today.
And there's allegedly some reinforced earthworks out near Berryville of Milroy's doing. I'm not familiar with it. I've never heard of where that is today. I mean, it might just be one of those, legends, local legends.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. So coming along to January, what happens January 1 across the country is Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect, freeing all slaves in rebelling states. Well, who's going to listen to that? Unless you're under the control of a Union general that's going to enforce it. So, Virginia being a rebelling state and Milroy being a staunch abolitionist, he will enforce this Emancipation Proclamation. And on January 5th, he will issue his own freedom to slaves, which does that exactly. And by the end of his occupation in June 1863, roughly 5,000 African Americans will be freed throughout the lower Shenandoah Valley as a result of his enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation. But Milroy, during this time, he'll be promoted to Major General in March of 63, but ultimately his career comes to a catastrophic halt in a way during the Second Battle of Winchester, June 13th, 14th, and 15th of 1863, and we covered that in episode 1. So indeed, go give that a listen. So after that, Milroy sent out of Winchester, Confederates occupy, and it will remain occupied during the Gettysburg campaign. And after Gettysburg, they'll come back, and I believe it'll remain in a solid, consistent Confederate occupation throughout the remainder of 63 into 64. I can't think of any major occupation that takes place between 63 and 64.
Yeah.
Well, come 64, the war's back on, winter's over, and the valley's getting involved with some battles. But the focus is not Winchester, more or less is the upper Shenandoah Valley, the southern end, and the railroad connection down there with the Piedmont area and Southside Virginia, and all that connection to Richmond. So in the Petersburg area. So come May, what's his name? Oh, Newmarket. Franz Sigel.
Yeah.
Will be in the Martinsburg area and occupy Winchester, I believe from like March into April, maybe of 64. And this will begin in tandem, the Newmarket campaign, which is a part of the greater overland campaign that Grant started with his, in his new command out in eastern Virginia. And as a result, you'll get the Battle of Newmarket in May, and then the Battle of Piedmont even south of there in June of 64, and then you'll have Hunter's raid on Lexington down to Lynchburg, and you'll have the Battle of Lynchburg where Jubal Early will arrive, and then it's just a great race back up the valley again. And Early's just on the move all the way up, and he gets right to the gates of Washington at the Battle of Fort Stevens, and then comes right back into the valley. And then you'll get some battles like Cool Spring. At this point,
all over the place.
I know Early's on the move in the summer of 64.
Speaking of that, quick tidbit. Speaking of just being at the gates of D.C., I know from an archaeological standpoint, metal detecting standpoint, someone had posted in a group that I'm in a Louisiana coat button that was found in like one of the suburbs of D.C. that would have proven that he made it just slightly further than what was initially thought. But the fact that one of those was found just, that close to Washington was a cool little piece.
That is weird. Yeah.
But continue.
No, that's cool.
Piece,
and we'll dive in a little bit to the archaeology here in a second with the Winchester area. But Confederates will take control of Winchester in the middle of July 1864, and will hold Winchester for a short period of time. And that's when the Federals will take command, and they're back in action messing around. But come August, there's a larger federal force that's coming to the valley. out of the Harpers Ferry area, Jefferson County, West Virginia at this point. And Winchester's pretty much under the control of Jubal Early and the Confederates. But come September, that's going to change. And we'll cover that a little bit more in another episode, hopefully later on this year. But you'll have the Third Battle of Winchester that'll take place. And that'll be the largest and costliest battle fought in the Shenandoah Valley during the Civil War. It'll be the final battle around Winchester fought during the war. So this gets you up to 6. So we have, first Kernstown, first Winchester, second Winchester, second Kernstown, Rutherford's Farm, and third Winchester, September 19th, 1864. You will have the Confederates pushed out of Winchester, Federals take occupation, and they will hold that occupation to this day. So that's a little bit of the occupation timeline. That took up a good bit of it, but that's just a good understanding of the back and forth. Mm-hmm. During that time, during Third Winchester especially, to give a little bit more credit to the image we used for the episode picture, that sketch is done by Union sketch artist James Taylor. It is depicting Confederate prisoners being held in the yard of the Frederick County Courthouse after the Third Battle of Winchester. I think he says in the notes of the sketch, it's like 1,500 to 2,000 Confederate soldiers were supposedly held at the courthouse as prisoner.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so that's in the front yard, which was surrounded by like a 5 foot iron fence, which no longer stands today, and then in the building as well. So that's just a little. That's one of the other uses of the courthouse there, and it was Winchester itself didn't have a large prison set up. A little known fact about Winchester: during World War II, it was a large POW camp for Germans.
Mm-hmm. My grandfather was actually, when he was in elementary school, was friends with a German POW that was at the Virginia Avenue School.
Yeah.
He would go up to the fence and talk to him at recess.
Wow. Mm-hmm. They have a Smithfield, I don't know if that was the official name, but Smithfield Avenue is roughly where the location of that POW camp was. So that was a little more extravagant than what was here during the war. Winchester itself was just used as kind of a temporary holding place at different, for prisoners, both sides. And then they'd be shipped off to larger prisons in their respective country. So that's a little bit about the battles themselves and the occupations. It's estimated that at the end of the war, roughly 200 buildings and homes were completely non-existent at the end of the war.
That's believable. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, and at the same time, it with all those the building damage, you also had a massive influx of dead soldiers everywhere. And that's why you would get you'd get the establishment in 1866 of the Winchester National Cemetery. That could be wrong. I could be wrong on that. 1866 is when Stonewall Cemetery is officially Stonewall Cemetery. Mm-hmm. I think Winchester National Cemetery is the same year.
But at any rate, they were basically the townspeople were tasked with, going out to all these farm fields and just areas around the county where soldiers had been buried where they fell or close to where they fell on the field of battle, and being reinterred here at the cemeteries where they have a more memorialized location. And Mike Robinson did a great story on that, I think, in his
Winchester Tales.
Excuse me. Yeah, Winchester Tales. But he did a really good story on that one as well. As I believe, there was I think it was just one guy. It wasn't a commission. It was just one guy that was hired to go and just collect up all the war junk in the fields, so farmers could, tend to their fields and plow them and everything without, getting caught up every few feet on muskets and accoutrements and other just war junk, Yeah. And he gathered all of that stuff up and buried it in some pit somewhere. But I think Mike did a story on that one as well that was really good. And I know for archaeologists and relic hunters such as myself, that one That one really gets you salivating a little bit to think, wow, there could be a pit out there somewhere that's just filled with random stuff, shells and muskets and the like. But yeah, I mean, it's just a testament to how much of a war-torn area this part of Virginia was at that time, and then just the cleanup that just this area alone required after that.
Yeah, the Winchester National Cemetery was established in 1866, so the same year as the Stonewall Confederate Cemetery. There's roughly 5,561 internments in the Winchester National Cemetery, but not all of those are Civil War burials. I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure it's a large majority are. There's, from battles like Front Royal, Newmarket, Harper's Ferry, Cool Spring, from Martinsburg, West Virginia, all the way out to Romney are all interred there. There's 14 monuments to Union regiments, corps, and states located in there. One of the monuments was actually originally out where I-81 is, close to the 3rd Winchester Battlefield Park today, and they moved it. Rumor has it is because the guy that bought the property and was farming it didn't like having to go around a Union monument, so he had it moved to the cemetery. So, but that's a beautiful cemetery. Same with the Stonewall Cemetery.
I know you and I toured that one, and that was incredible just to see the.
We did tour that.
Yeah, just to see the representation of the
states
that were there. I mean,
there's 2,575 Confederate soldiers buried in the Stonewall Cemetery. 800 are unknown, and that's under that center.
Yeah. Well, and there's some from Florida and Arkansas and Texas. I mean, some troops that you don't normally hear about being in this area, but they're buried here in Winchester, so they were obviously here. But that's, I mean, it's
Turner Ashby's buried there.
Yeah, some big names.
The Patton brothers are buried there. But yeah, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, Maryland, Virginia, obviously, North Carolina, South Carolina.
I think every state in the Confederacy, honestly. I think every seceded state is represented there in some capacity. Because I know Florida's there. We saw that. Because I know I made a big deal about that one.
Freaking out.
And then Arkansas and Texas. But yeah, I mean that was. I mean it's a very sobering place to go and visit and reflect and just to see in person. I mean it's one of those things that it hits you when you visit there, whether you're looking out at 1,000 Confederate headstones or 1,000 Union headstones. I mean it's a sad realization to take all of that in and go, wow. I mean like each one of these, it's not just a stone. I mean it's a person.
Yeah, so Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Maryland, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia. Wow.
Yeah.
And there's a Virginia addition. And then surrounding the 800 unknown, they're broken up into 4 battles. Or I guess a majority. The ones that could be identified to a battle, were those corners. So Cedar Creek, Winchester, Cool Spring, and Kernstown are the 4 kind of slices of the pie to that unknown area. And then the center of that is that large unknown marker.
Just unknown across the board.
Yeah. And that cemetery itself was a part of the battlefield.
3rd Winchester, for sure.
Yeah, 2,575 Confederate soldiers buried there. Wow.
Just seeing all those headstones, it looks like more. But, I mean, even still, it's just...
Yeah, it doesn't seem like 2,000.
Yeah, row after row, it's crazy.
Yeah, and they were burying soldiers in those cemeteries, both federal graves in the National Cemetery before it was the National Cemetery, and the Confederates in that area of Mount Hebron as early as 1862. Obviously, so after after Kernstown, they were like, we got to do something with the dead. So yeah, that was a big issue. One thing we didn't talk about a lot were the identified camps that are in the area, and we'll cover that really quick. So there was Camp Hill, which was on the south side of Winchester, where I think it's like the Catholic cemetery is today.
Yep.
That area.
New York camp.
You have the Smithfield Trench Line, which
It runs along Smithfield Ave.
Yeah, Smithfield Ave.
Yeah.
Camp Russell. Do you want to talk about Camp Russell?
That's a pretty well-known one. It's been hunted to death over the years because obviously that's still private property. But I mean, it spans from Kernstown at the Valley Pike all the way over to Stephen City, yeah, Front Royal Pike 522.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's a long camp. I mean, but that's all.
It was a 19th Corps camp.
19th, but it's 1864 to 65, I think. Maybe 65. I'll have somebody will correct me on that. Because I don't typically hunt Union camps like that, you know me. But yeah, it's massive. I know Connecticut troops were there because I mean Connecticut buttons were found there. But just a wide variety of stuff. I know where the Alamo Draft House now sits. My parents found a ton of stuff there when the ground was broken for that, and that was all just the beginnings of the camp as it stretches back in there, which we didn't cover that in the earthworks and fortifications. There's actually part of that camp has some earthworks and like a readout in the middle of it, way back in there. But that's some sort. I don't know why they built that back in there. There's no reason for it, but I mean it's there.
It's near the Opequon Creek, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I mean that's
just a creek fortification, I guess, but even still, it's just weird to be where it's at.
Yeah. Camp Sheridan.
That is, it's tough to explain to those that aren't familiar with the area, but that's like
first Kernstown area.
More so in Winchester. It's like across the street, across Pleasant Valley from Jim Barnett Park. I believe is that one. It's like a hospital camp. Is it the Sheridan Hospital Camp?
That's different.
Okay. All right. So then so you call Camp Sheridan. That's Kernstown. Yes, you were right about that. That's Kernstown.
Yeah. Camp Sheridan.
Well known.
Camp Averill.
That's on the 3rd Winchester Battlefield. That's in like the first woods. Yeah.
And where Millbrook High School is today.
Main stuff came out of there.
Yeah.
Way back before, obviously before you guys ever had any authority over it, but back in the day.
And then, is there any other ones I'm missing?
I mean, there's tons of camps around here that aren't named. You know what I mean? Those big ones like that. There's plenty of other ones. That
Winchester was a massive camp.
Yeah, Winchester itself is a camp.
Yeah.
I mean,
with all these occupations, they had to stay somewhere, and they were all not sleeping at the Taylor Hotel.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, they were anywhere they could pitch a tent. Really, in this area. It's hard to go anywhere in this area and throw a rock and not find, some evidence of Civil War activity. But,
yeah.
And
you were right with the field hospitals. So, yeah, Sheridan's Field Hospital was the one. It's just to the south, to the east of where Camp Hill is, on the east side of Millwood Avenue today. Between that and Pleasant Valley Road, but inside of Abrams Creek. I think that's Abrams Creek, or that's the Town Run.
Town Run, I think. No, it's Abrams. Abrams
Creek.
There, yeah. But
so it's down in there. Little... And there's actually remnants. It's owned by the city of Winchester, and there's remnants of the hospital tent sites because the floor of this massive hospital, it had like 400 tents, was heated with radiant heat through the floor.
I did not know that.
Yeah, wild.
Wow.
I could be wrong, but we've printed it on a lot of interpretive signage, so it better be right. No, I'm pretty sure it's right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. It was a super large hospital, started right after 3rd Winchester. And then website I'm looking at right here list White Sulphur Springs, also known as Jordan Springs, was the hotel and resort. Was that a part of a hospital?
It could have been. I know there's rifle pits around it. Second, I think 1st and 2nd U.S. Cav camp in the vicinity.
Like on the hills behind it, or no?
Not quite.
Okay.
It's in the vicinity, but it's hard to explain without without showing you. But yeah, just in that general neighborhood, a lot of activity there. I know Allegheny Johnson used that as his headquarters at 2nd Winchester because that's where he came down, Jordan Springs and Old Charlestown Road to cut off Milroy at the north end of town. But yeah, I mean the federal camps are obviously more well known. I know there's a Custer cavalry camp, Millwood Pike, where the Ravens now is. That neighborhood.
Is that Custer? I thought Custer was out off 50 West. Custer had a headquarters like right where 37's exit.
He's
or
got a
on-ramp.
couple of them. Yeah, he's had a couple.
He was around. He wasn't here once.
I know of a few of his in this area. But yeah, where the Ravens housing development now is.
So 50 east.
Yeah, because you'll notice when you go out that way, that development is Custer Drive or Custer Avenue. But yeah, I think it's also marked on a map as like 83rd PA.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't know where you find these camp maps at. I've never seen a map that's like
a lot of research.
A lot of research. Okay. Headquarters wise, like where were these guys at? Jackson, like I said, Colonel Lewis T. Moore, that owned a house on Braddock Street, let him borrow it 415 North Braddock, I think it is, which is today Jackson's headquarters museum. Headquarters from late winter of 61 into 62. So that's a museum today. On the corner of Piccadilly and Braddock Street, catty corner to the Hanley Library here in town, that was the Logan home. It's got a huge apple in the front of it. It's Kimberly's store today.
That was Sheridan's headquarters, right?
That was Sheridan's headquarters after 3rd Winchester. So it's where he's coming from, that area when he's doing Sheridan's ride during Cedar Creek. But earlier in the war, that's actually used as Milroy's headquarters during Second Winchester, during his occupation in 63. And he'll actually live there part-time with the Logans and then eventually kick the Logans out when his wife comes to town. And he kicks them right out, sends them in a wagon and sends them on their way. He was accused of stealing like their silver or something, their silverware. And when Milroy returns to Winchester post-war to speak for some election that's happening, for some president that's running, I think.
That's amazing that he'd even show his face in this town.
I know. Wild guy.
Bold.
Hey, you got to hand it to him, though. He just didn't curl away. He was like, I think this might be a good idea.
This might be the town.
I think they forgot. He comes, and I think when he's given the speech, and rumor has it he gave the speech at the courthouse, which is kind of exciting if he gave it from the steps, that the citizens and the town folk brought like silverware and spoons and held them up, and they were like, where's the spoons? And
they don't forget.
I think something about the Arnold family's cow got stolen, and they were like, where's the Arnold's cow? They were just screaming hell.
Just give them a hard time.
Yeah, so it's people always ask, is Winchester haunted? There's a lot. If you come here like during the summer months, there might be like people dressed in like civilian Civil War wear giving ghost tours with a lantern. I did that like when we first moved to Winchester when I was a kid. I remember we had to pay like a lot of money, but I don't know. Rumor has it that it's haunted. I don't know. Our good friend Mike Robinson has done a couple ghost shows that have been on TV. Like ghost hunters and stuff for some historic homes here. But I don't know. Don't ask me about the ghosts because I can't answer that. But
I want to believe in them, but like I got to be genuinely scared to believe in them.
I mean, we're recording here in the historic Bell House. We haven't experienced anything. The courthouse, I've worked a lot of late nights there, never experienced anything. I've been out on the battlefields late at night, never experienced anything. So,
and the old painted lady next to us hasn't
she hasn't come out and offered her coin that she's holding to us.
Yeah.
So no, I a lot of people ask that. I think that's up for you to decide. I hope you would come down and visit and give it a chance, and maybe you find it for yourself.
So much to see.
Yeah. Oh yeah, let's dive right into that. So I know we're running a little bit long on time here, but
the real ones will listen.
Exactly. Just give her a pause and resume her tomorrow or something.
Yeah.
So when you're coming to Winchester, what is there to do? First and foremost, there's the beautiful Shenandoah Valley Civil War Museum located in downtown Winchester at the old Frederick County Courthouse. That has the newly renovated one-story 1,000 Voices exhibit in the Wilkins Exhibit Hall, and the upstairs in the restored historic 1840s courtroom. That is where I would start to get your overview of the Civil War in the Shenandoah Valley in Winchester. And then if it's a, come in the summer. Come in the summer because a lot of stuff's open. So from there, I would go to Jackson's headquarters maybe. It's a beautiful museum.
There's
Try it
some
out.
really cool artifacts in that
like
display,
we mentioned at the beginning of the
personal to
episode, the Continental Guard, which were responded to John Brown and Harper's Ferry. They wore like Continental style, like Revolutionary War style uniforms, and one of them is on display at Jackson's headquarters. So that's pretty cool.
It's insane that that's still intact.
I know, wild. So that's there. You can go to, from there, I would go out to, what other Civil War buildings? I think that's it. I would go then to
the one on the Opequon that you guys have. That's not open to the public yet.
It's not open to the public.
One day
you can drive by and look at it. He's talking about Millbank,
which
is right next to the water treatment plant, which you will not miss because you'll smell it before you see it.
Yep,
out there off Route 7 East. So what's after that? I would go to the James R. Wilkins Winchester Battlefield Visitor Center. That is where I would start and get an idea of the battles that take place around here. So there's 6 battles we mentioned. It's not just the 3rd Winchester that's talked about there. It's all 6 that take place in and around the town. So that's where I would get that overview and get some information about the park. Then from there,
if you're on a weekend though.
So yeah, I'm saying if you from there, I would go to Kernstown. And if you come on the weekend, the Kernstown Battlefield Park that has the Pritchard Grimm House on it, operated by the Kernstown Battlefield Association, is open on a weekend during the warm months. I would go to Rose Hill first, though, before that. I'd go to Rose Hill Park, which is open. It's a county-operated park. And this is where I would go to see the stone wall that was fought over. And it's parts of Sandy Ridge. And
Episode 4, we talked about that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So then from there, I'd go to the main Kernstown Battlefield Park, visit the great people at the Kernstown Battlefield Association, go inside the Pritchard Grimm Farmhouse, go inside their artillery room and museum, and then tour the battlefield there. You get to walk the trails where the Confederate assault came. You can walk up Pritchard's Hill and see that. But you're not just learning 1st Kernstown, you're learning 2nd Kernstown there too, and a little bit of 2nd Winchester. So you're getting that all in one park. From there, I would go to Star Fort and visit Star Fort.
Fort Collier's next.
Cool. Yeah. And then from there, I'd go back to 3rd Winchester after Star Fort.
Yeah.
Tour the 3rd Winchester Battlefield Park. And then from there, go to Fort Collier.
That would make more sense, yeah.
And then after Fort Collier, I would go to the cemeteries. I would go to
Take
Mount
it all
Hebron.
in, reflect afterwards.
Yeah. Well, then the battle really ends there.
Yeah.
Trying to put them in chronological order. Go to Mount Hebron, then go to in the Stonewall Cemetery, then go to Winchester National. And then that's kind of it. And on top of it, our great sponsor, the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, a couple of years ago created an app called Civil War Winchester. Oh my gosh. It's super handy because there's a built-in audio tour and driving tour. Oh my gosh. It's got 20-something stops. And it does everything from the battles to the people and historic homes. And there's no chronological order to that. But it's able to take you to all the other stuff that doesn't have normal public parking access. You can get really close and learn about something. So download the Civil War Winchester app if you're coming to Winchester to do Civil War. And while you're in the area, slide down to Cedar Creek because that's still in Frederick County. So it's still right near Winchester.
It's here.
And go look at Cedar Creek. And say you did it.
And then once you're done and hungry, you can stop by the Taylor Hotel for a bite to eat.
Oh, yeah. If you're in town, then, walk the old town, In Winchester, you get to see the courthouse you were at in the morning if you came.
You can see some bullet marks on some of those old buildings up in the top.
That's a bold statement, Elijah.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I've seen them.
Wow.
Yeah, got to look at some of the old period homes or buildings down there on the Walking Mall. You can see little pock marks on the top of them in the brick.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
At least that's what I think they are. I mean, it looks consistent with
that's true.
Mini ball strikes.
That's true.
But
a part of that audio tour is the Bell House too, so you can see the outside and walk the grounds of the.
You might even see us in here recording a podcast.
Yeah, recording a podcast in here. So yeah, we encourage you guys to come to Winchester. There's so much to see here, so much to do here, And we barely scratched the surface of it. I mean, those occupations alone could be an episode in and of themselves. So my apologies if I was stumbling on some things talking about and saying a lot of ums and stuff.
Too much information.
It's like I don't know how much to say and what to say, but we could talk about this for hours, and we're on track to do so. So without further ado, that's Civil War Winchester. Anything else you want to add, Elijah?
Not that I can think of. I mean, just keep listening, keep giving us 5 stars, and join the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, and we can help preserve some more historic sites for you guys to come visit.
Yeah, a lot of exciting Battlefields property. A lot of Battlefield properties are in the works to be preserved in 2024. It's exciting to be in the sausage making end of it, and know what's coming down the pike in a literal sense. So if you want to know what's working preservation wise, go ahead and become a member. You get our mail, you get a cool magazine, and you get to be my friend.
And you get a calendar.
I
like the calendar.
Calendar's nice. Use it. It's got really cool pictures.
Yeah, I love
Big boxes so you can write in it. Nice high quality paper that we use in there. But that stuff really does support us and what we do. And actually, from our last episode, we had a couple individuals did what we asked them to do and became members of the Battlefields Foundation. They wrote in the note of their little form they filled out. They said, "Hey, we joined because of the podcast," which really made me happy.
Love that.
Yeah, it was super exciting to see. So you guys are great. If you got any suggestions for topics and bourbons, please hit us in our private and direct messages. And thank you all so much for listening and subscribing and liking our stuff, sharing it. This was a fun one, but we're excited for the next one. 2024 is going to be a great year for the Battlefields and Bourbon Podcast, and we hope you stick around to listen. So thank you all so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.